So what we're going to do now is slightly different. Instead of looking at coding this directly, we are going to instead use JShell, which is a utility that's been in Java since Java 9, to basically show the list methods on the fly. So I'm going to create a new list here. I'm going to specifically create a list of strings. A list of string, and I'm going to call it list because that's what I usually call it. It's very easy to remember what it is. And I'm going to make a new array list out of it. And this is basically a REPL loop, where basically it's going to take one line at a time, read it, R, E, evaluate, P, print the result, right? It said list is an empty list, and then L, loop it. Keep doing it again and again. So, I'm going to add a bunch of swords to this list. So let's go ahead and look at the add method. So what an add method does is that it adds it to the end of the list. So let's go ahead and add sword to the list. Now the add method, when you give it only one parameter, will add it to the end of the list and return true. Okay, so one parameter returns true, puts it into the end of the list. We can see that by printing out list. There, it's now at the end of the list. It's also the first thing in the list. Funny how that works out when you're the first thing. The only thing. So let's go ahead and list.add Claymore. Right? Let's go ahead and add Rapier. And Saber. So let's go ahead and now print out, look at what we've got. Again, let's just go ahead and type in list so that will print out. And we get sword, claymore, rapier, saber. Notice that basically that claymore was added to the end of the list, then rapier was added to the end of the list, and saber was added to the end of the list. All right, so that is the add method. It will add it to the last possible index in this list. So what are the indices? Well, we can use the get method to retrieve our indices. So get 0 will give me sword. Get 1 is claymore. 2 is rapier. Get 3 is saber. Works just like the indices in an array. The only difference is that we are using the get method as opposed to doing this, because that's only valid for arrays. Now, so get 3, right? Now if I try to go out of bounds, it'll give me an error. Right, it says it's out of bounds. Right? Right, it only has 4 items in it, so it's indices 0 through 3. Likewise, if I try to go underneath, -1 is out of bounds as well. Right, we get a bunch of errors. Okay, just to show that I didn't completely mess things up here. 2 is rapier. 0, 1, 2, 3. All right. So let's go ahead and print out our list again so we can just see what we've got here. Okay, so now I mentioned I inferred that there's another add method, one with 2 parameters. And when you have 2 parameters, you have basically your index and what you want to add. So the index always comes first, and I want to add at index to katana. Now, when you provide an index and the thing to add, when you have 2 arguments, it's a void method. It doesn't return anything. Why? It's because with sets, it has to do with basically sets, essentially. In a set, you'll see in many modules later, you'll see that it's possible to return true or false when you add something. In a list, because we can allow duplicates, you're going to always return true, because we're always able to add something to a list. So katana, let's go ahead and say maybe, so now, actually before we add anything else, so list.add added it to index 2. So sword, claymore, katana, but it doesn't overwrite rapier. It instead pushes everything over to the right. So we've got sword, claymore, katana, rapier, saber, So we inserted this into index 2, right? And pushed everything over to the right. Sword, claymore, katana, rapier, saber. So now you've got 5 items, and if I were to get index 2 now, it says katana. Right? Now, this is a huge advantage over arrays, right? This is dynamically resizing, right, as we need it, and it is, we have a bit more of a complex operations, which is that we're able to put things in wherever we want, and we can add to the end as well. If I wanted to add something to the beginning, like longsword, I would just say I want to put it at index 0. All right. So, let's go ahead and add a non-sword to this list. So if I were to put it list.add to index 1 spear is going to push everything over to the that's currently in index 1 to the right. So sword will get moved all the way. Will get moved to index 2. Claymore will be index 3, and so on and so forth. Longsword, spear, sword, claymore, katana, rapier, saber. So it's pretty cool how that just moves everything over. Okay. Now, however, just like we have an add method, we also do have a remove method. All right. So what does the remove method do? It pulls something out. So let's go ahead and say, so again, there's 2 ways we can do this. We can do list.remove, and remove here will, if I give it a specific thing I want to remove, such as spear, it will look for it, and if it contains it, it will remove it and return true or false based on whether it was able to remove it or not. And now if we print out list, no spear is gone. So that's pretty cool. You can look for something specific and remove it. Let's go ahead and add it back in. The other thing you can do is you can ask, which is way more common, is to ask for a specific index. Remove index 1. Now notice over here that what it returned was a spear. It said it returned spear. So the list.remove, and again, if we do .remove index 0, string removed, we do that, we now can store it. So when we remove something from a list, it will store. You have the option of storing it because it will be returned to you. So sword, claymore, katana, rapier, saber. And notice, by the way, the important thing, just like adding in the middle shifted everything over, so does removing. So now, what's at index 1? Or claymore is. What's at index 0? Sword is. All right, let's go ahead and look at one more thing, or 2 more things. Well, actually, quite a bit more than that. Sorry. Okay, list.add index 5 Jian. Okay, list.add index 5 0 1 2 3 4. So now there's no index 5, but that's okay. Adding in something at index 5 is perfectly fine because it's just adding it to the end. Index 5 didn't exist yet, but we can put it to the end. But note that we can't add something to index 10 because that will be out of bounds. It would. Why is that out of bounds and this is not, even though there's no index 5 or was no index 5? It's because we can easily just tack it on to the end, right? If we couldn't just tack it on to the end, we'd never be able to add anything at all. We'd never be able to resize it. But if adding something would create a gap, that's when you'll get an error. Likewise, you can't remove something that's out of bounds, but that's fairly straightforward. The other method, that's just like there's a get, there's a set. Here, let's go ahead and set index 0. Let's make use of that removed variable. List.set index 0 to be longsword. And what it will do is that it will replace what's in that index 0 with this argument over here, and it will return what just got replaced. Oh, sorry, removed. And again, we've already gone over this one, but if you want to know how big it is, list.size. Those are the important operators for this. There's some other ones, such as add all, which adds everything in from a list to the end of this. You can go ahead and look through them, but these 5, the add, remove, the get, and set, are the big ones that we will focus on for both array lists and linked lists.